everybody. I am so excited to be here for our very first episode of Donuts in Demand of 2024. I don't know if it's set in with all of you all that it's 2024, but I think for the most part, I've been pretty good about like, oh, it's 2024. It hasn't been as much of like, oh, I've said the wrong year, but let me know how you're feeling. I guess we actually are halfway through the month. So wild journey, but I'm so excited you all are here joining us today. We have two great guests to jump into all things demand generation. But first, I have some housekeeping things to go through. If you joined us before, you kind of know my song and dance. If you're new, we're super excited for you to be here. So anyways, welcome. We're pumped to have you here. So first and foremost, we have a giveaway. So we always start our episodes with information on our giveaway because it is the beginning of a new year and we're all like fresh and thinking about, you know, maybe like what we want to plan out for the year, what we want to do. We are going to give away these snazzy 2024 planners. So we are giving away 10 of these planners today to anyone who does the following things. So take some time, drop over in the chat, say something, tell us where you're from, what org you're with, what's your role, what are you hoping to learn today during the episode. Also, drop something in the Q&A, anything you want to ask our speakers live at the end of the episode, any demand generation questions you have, you're yearning to kind of achieve in 2024. And then also take one of our polls. We'll have 3 polls open throughout the episode, and we'd love to have your feedback on those polls. So look how nice this little planner is. Like, I'm super excited. I think it's going to be a nice little item if you win it, because you can go and kind of plan your year. Going to be awesome. So if you want to win, have an opportunity to win that, feel free, drop something in the chat, take a poll, say hello. We're excited for you to be here. So anyways, beyond our little snazzy 2024 planner that we're giving away, a few other items to note. So you'll see that nice little orange button at the top of your screen. It says Take Demand Gen Survey. We are actually running a demand generation compensation survey to help us put out a report for demand generation marketers. This report is going to help give us all transparency across salaries and some information you can use, whether you're using it to get a new job, get a promotion, get a salary bump. So please take a few moments to click that button. Once you do, you'll get a nice little message, and then I'll follow up with the link to that survey and more information. We would love to gather as much data as possible so we can make this report as robust as possible. So again, take some time, click that Take Demand Gen survey. It literally takes less than 5 minutes. If you've taken it already, feel free to drop in the chat and say how easy it was, just to help me get a few more responses there, right? So last few things before we jump in. And again, with that compensation survey, you can submit it totally anonymously. So just keep that in mind. Anyways, as usual, we do have some docs available for you that relate to the content of this episode. Feel free to go over there, hit that docs tab on the right, peruse through the lovely materials we provided you. And last but not least, actually, that's all it. That's all my announcements for you all. So I see people chatting in the chat. So excited to see you all here. I see some people from Denver and Chicago, Nigeria. Nice to see you, Hanifa. We're excited you're here. So anyways, time to get started. I'm going to welcome our first guest on stage. So our first guest is going to be Angela. So we have Angela Romero, who is the Director of Demand Generation at Spekit. So Angela, come on up, join me on stage. Tell me about your donut, a little bit about your role, and where you got your sweet treat from.
Yeah, I got my sweet treat from no other than Voodoo Donuts. So we have a nice little voodoo doll here. Honestly, I'm more of like a classic, like glazed donut gal myself, but I thought I'd have some fun. Voodoo Donuts is really fun. Pink box. I was like, let me go all out for episode of Donuts in Demand. And like you mentioned, I lead Demand Gen at Spekit. We are a just-in-time enablement tool. We're really paving the way for enablement and learning at work and changing the way that employees do that. And I've been working in marketing for a little over 10 years and doing demand gen about half that time. So I'm really happy to be here and talk all things demand gen.
We're so excited to have you here, and I am very jealous of your voodoo donuts. We do not have any of those anywhere close to where I am. I think the last time I had one was probably 2 or 3 years ago when I was at Universal Studios, and there's ones over in that area. So I actually have something really fascinating today. I don't think I've ever seen before. I have a chocolate donut with an orange glaze. So I don't know if anyone's had a chocolate and orange donut before, but I'm excited to dive into that later. So next up, I'm going to welcome our second guest. So our second guest is Kelly Cheng, who actually is my very own manager. She is the head of marketing and growth at Goldcast. So Kelly, welcome. Show off your donut. Tell us a little bit about your role and where you got your sweet treat from.
Hi, everybody. Hey, Lindsay. Hey, Angela. Thanks for having me. Love being a guest on a show on Goldcast. I'm the head of marketing here at Goldcast. Been at Goldcast for 2.5 years. Been in B2B marketing for 12 plus years. My donut for today, I'm repping Boston, so we have got to go Dunkin'. We run on Dunkin', and I'm also a very classic gal, so you can't get more classic than an old fashioned.
It's a good choice. And so a little bit of context for you all before we start diving in. And you're probably like, you have someone from Goldcast as a guest. That might be kind of weird. Well, cat's out of the bag. If y'all don't know, I'm actually welcoming a baby. My due date is January 31st. So it's literally right around the corner. And Kelly is going to be our new host while I'm out on maternity leave. So it just made sense to kind of bring Kelly on as the guest for my final episode before I head out. So exciting news. You will be in great hands while I'm out. And we're super excited to welcome Kelly as the host. But she's playing guest today. So anyways, despite that little announcement, let's dive into our content. Angela, I'm going to start off with you. So to get us kicked off in the right mindset, how do you define demand generation?
Yeah, I know this is a tricky one. And I thought, you know what, might as well keep it on theme of donuts. I think donuts and donut shops, it's an analogy that we can all kind of get behind. And so when I define demand generation, I see it as the art of making people crave and want a donut before they even know they want a donut. So trying to create that want and that need and that desire before someone knows exactly what the solution to that need or desire is.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, like short, simple, easy to understand, like way to knock it out of the park there. So I love that. Kelly, what is your interpretation?
Oh man, I hate that I have to go after Angela. Well, let's see. In my perspective, demand generation is it's the process. It's a data-driven process of driving an awareness and interest for product or service. But your long-term goal is to build a long-term relationship with that buyer. So that's a very, very scientific and boring answer. But I think when you boil it down, it really is about understanding your audience and the value your offer provides and how you can, bring those two together.
Love it. Always I think a lot of the times on the show, it comes down to alignment, right? I think that has definitely been a buzzword on Donuts and Demand. So thank you both for kicking us off with that kind of very easy yet very hard question to answer. So now we're going to jump into our first big segment. So this is Sprinkles of Demand. So Sprinkles of Demand is really a free-for-all for our guests to go in whatever direction of demand generation they would like to. So Kelly, we're going to start with you. So what are a few of your best bite-sized tips for demand generation? Oh, Kelly, you're on mute.
I feel like that has got to happen to some host or guest. So hopefully I'm the first guest that has gone on mute for you.
You are the first. It's okay. And also context for everyone else watching, Kelly was on maternity leave for the last 4 months. So she's just getting warmed back up into the Goldcast vibes.
I'm a little rusty, but I'll get back right into it. So I think the first tip, I think it goes back into my definition of demand generation is really understanding your audience. I would say the first tip, if you're brand new to a role, you have to understand your audience and stay close to your customer. I would say interview your customers, talk to the people that speak with your customers. So your salespeople, your customer success people, people that are on the front lines. It's really, really important to understand your audience, who you're selling to, those pain points that they have. If you understand those really well and how your product solves for those things, then you've got product market fit, which is what a lot of people strive to have. But I think that's the first step, is really, really understanding your audience extremely well, being able to like put your feet in their shoes, understand their pain points, and really, really empathize with their struggles and their day-to-day and how you can help them. I think that if you can figure that out, all the tactics you can learn, but if you understand that wholeheartedly, you've got your demand generation strategy.
Oh, I like that you brought up product market fit, because I think that is very elusive to a lot of people, confusing to a lot of people. So I think you packaged that up really well, of just how to understand what that actually means and why that needs to be like the foundation before you get into tactical things, because people seem to get tactical happy every once in a while. So,
well, a lot of people start from the end. They start with the tactics without really fully understanding the why behind of what you're doing. So I think if you kind of do some soul searching and really start from the why, then the how will become a lot easier.
I love it. Great. Well, Angela, over to you. What are your sprinkles of demand for us today?
Yeah, well, I love what Kelly said. And I feel like there's so much more I can add to that because I just love it so much. But one of my sprinkles, I think, aligns really well on how you can do that and get that information. I know, Kelly, you mentioned interviewing customers, talk to your sales team. Something that I think is really valuable, if you have access, whether it's like Gong, Chorus, whatever, to listen to the conversations that your pre-sales team and your sales team are having with the leads that you're bringing in, you can get some real gems from that. Not only from what the prospect and the lead is saying to your sales team, which really takes some really good listening, active listening to those phone calls to say, okay, like, what are they really talking about here? Where was there some hesitancy? What did the sales rep ask or say that all of a sudden you felt like a shift in energy? They got excited, or maybe a shift in energy. They got really like upset maybe, or it definitely hit a nerve, if you listen for those things. And if you listen to enough of those calls, you'll start to notice trends and notice that, like, okay, those points of excitement, light bulb moments. I caught a few of those, and I can now understand maybe how to talk to our leads better, or maybe, going back to the why, identifying something that you haven't created in demand gen, or built into your tactics or your plans, that now you just have that gem of knowledge that you can really connect on a deeper level. So I think listening to those calls is like golden. And then my other sprinkle that I think is important, I wanted to share, that I think is so helpful for demand gen managers, and I've fallen guilty to the reverse of this, is thinking that you really understand the journey that your lead is going on once they make that handoff into sales. And you might have something in your head where you're like, yeah, I know the stages, I know pretty much what's happening, but I mean, like, getting super granular. Like, when was the last time that you looked at maybe the confirmation messaging or copy or page that they get once they do raise their hand and have a high intent action, like schedule a demo or request pricing? And then what does that email look like? Have you looked at the copy and ways to just optimize that? And then how long does it take for your BDR or your rep to get back to them? And what are they saying or sending? Like, really, what exactly is going on at every stage, and what that handoff is like, and what goes on during those initial phone calls, and what the follow-up is. So we're just, again, understanding really detailed what's going on at every point, so that you can then be a better partner with sales and say, like, hey, I think if we made this little tweak, or, what, my bad, I haven't even looked at that confirmation email or messaging or that drip in a long time. I think if I reviewed that, we can definitely optimize some things to make it a better experience for the lead.
Yeah, I think you hit on something very top of mind to probably both Kelly and I in this moment, because I have been doing a lot of documentation of my processes, the things that I'm controlling and flowing on the back ends and things like that. And that does bring a lot of clarity across your teams, across your associates, to then further make improvements or make suggestions or find things that can be optimized or improved. And again, like, you might think you have it all laid out in your head, but things can change change, people can adjust things. And if it's not documented, like there's so much gray zone there. So I really like that you bring that up. And I think it's one of those like really great things you should always do, but one thing that usually is deprioritized pretty low on our to-do list. And then going back to your first point about being able to listen to those conversations, really hear the voice of your prospects and customers. I don't know if anyone else is guilty of this. Feel free to talk about in the chat. But, I'm one of those marketers who has put time blocks of like, go on a gong or like, go review this. And like, I don't do it sometimes, and it falls off the radar, again, gets deprioritized. So I would also encourage people to be public in sharing the things good and bad you're hearing, whether it's in like a customer feedback channel or just like a sales marketing chatter channel or a CSM channel, like having those areas of communication where you can find those things without having to kind of fall through, because sometimes you can feel like you're falling through your call recordings, or you're trying to search for something specific and you're spinning your wheels a little bit. So I love that you bring that up, because it is so important and crucial, and sometimes you have the best of intentions to do it and you might not. So love it. Well, we are going to jump into our next section, and this is actually a brand new section. I'm so excited we're bringing this segment live to you all, because I've wanted to do this one for a while. So I was really excited when we decided on it. So we are about to go into our sticky bun situations. So sticky bun situations is all about ethical dilemmas in marketing. So I am very excited to see what both our speakers are concerned about, but also what viewers are concerned about. So there will be a poll popping up here that references kind of like what ethical dilemmas you think are coming up. So we'd love to know your feedback in that poll. And again, if you submit an answer, you might win that really nifty planner. So head over to the polls tab, take that poll for us. We're going to launch off this one with Angela. So Angela, what ethical dilemma in marketing do you think marketing associates, leaders, colleagues are going to have to deal with in 2024?
Yeah, something that's top of mind for me, and maybe this is because my background previous to the company I'm at currently was in cybersecurity. So data privacy and how we share data, I really view it as, it's a shared responsibility in the company. And again, going back to my cybersecurity background, you can't depend on all of the procedures and technology in place to do that. You play an active role. And the reason it's top of mind is because for myself, and I think in 2024, a lot of other demand gen managers, we are starting to host and coordinate a lot of our own events, whether they're in person or virtual. And, we're working with our partners and other vendors and gathering speakers. And I know a lot of times part of that is like, hey, we'll share the lead list or come sponsor our event, you'll get the lead list, or, and some of that happens really ad hoc because, as marketers, we're super excited about building those relationships. So we're just so amped to have someone want to like partner with us. Yeah. And come to our event and sponsor and speak or bring that really great thought leader with them. And so we're really quick, I think, to then share the lead list or offer that as that incentive without thinking about, well, do I have the processes in place to protect the data of, the leads that I'm sharing, or, did they actually, and part of registering for my event, sign up for that? I know, as in demand gen, I also help run a lot of our corporate or conferences and trade shows. And so a lot of that is just baked into their processes. And so once we're taking that into our own hands and coordinating our own events, sometimes that can then fall to the wayside because it's not something we're used to. So just making sure that, if you are sharing those lead lists, that you have all of the terms and the policies in place that you need to say how you're using that data and how it'll be shared and what people are actually opting into.
Yes. And I think especially too, as policies, procedures, legalities continue to change and roll out, especially here in the US. I know the EU and European countries are a little bit ahead of us as far as like those privacy regulations and opt-in rules and things, but it's coming for us, y'all. So we got to be ready. And I think if you as a marketer, as a demand gen professional, have the right mindset around how to treat that prospect data. And I know a lot of the conversations I've been seeing on LinkedIn have been talking about how we just get very either selfish and or lazy in how we approach that. And I think that's what you touched on. And again, like, just because I signed up for an event or I, went to go read an ebook or whatever, like action it is of my intent, that doesn't mean I was like, hey, yeah, add me to your newsletter too, or like, yeah, put me on this thing too. And the more transparency you can have around that, the better trust you're going to build with those prospects and customers. But Angela, I do have a question on that point too. Is if you have marketing leaders or even ELT leaders or anyone else in that mix who is trying to force your hand to maybe not follow those best procedures as far as like handling that data and the way you're using it post event or post whatever it might be, any strategies for having those conversations or how to approach that?
That's a good question. I think the best approach is just like use the legal terms and the data behind it and just show like the ramifications and say like, hey, I know this feels like something small, but here are the ramifications of using this data incorrectly or sharing it incorrectly, or even if there was any data loss and we were responsible for it in the way that we shared it. You don't have to get too creative, like find that legal verbiage out there and share it. And hopefully that'll be enough in terms of like those real ethical dilemmas to show like, this is the ethically and, correct way to do things. And I hope that that'll be an easy way to convince any leadership that's pushing you to do otherwise.
Love it. And I'll say social proof too. Find something in the wild that is like complaining about the kind of system you're following and somehow nicely integrate it into your conversation. So, Kelly, over to you. What ethical dilemma in marketing do you want to conquer today?
Yeah. So I've been on maternity leave for a couple months now. And so I was really committed to being on leave. So I really did restrict my LinkedIn usage and all that. But I did sneak in a couple, times of just being on LinkedIn to see what's up. And I don't know if anybody here has noticed, but I have noticed a lot of demos that were like, join a demo and get $100. These pay to play kind of demos. I'm not sure if it's ethical, number one, and number two, effective. I think on both ends, ethical to accept a gift card for attending a demo and offer a gift card, giving a demo. I understand the intention behind it because I also feel that pressure of needing to get more SQLs, demo requests, inbound leads. But at the same time, I'm not sure if it's just as simple as paying for them. And so that is my big ethical dilemma in marketing. I see it done all the time. Sometimes I wonder if it's lazy marketing, if it's just your last Hail Mary type of marketing, but I do see it often. And it's something that I've noticed more and more.
I will take this conversation one level up because not only have I seen this happen, but I have seen teams. I don't know how this even happens. And if someone does, or if they've had it happen to them, connect with me in the chat because I'd love to know I'm not the only one. I have had companies who run those kind of like get a $50 or $100 gift card for taking our demo, approach me through 3 different people within literally the same week. And I'm like, what is happening here? Like, how is this so disparate that you don't, like, I don't know if it's that they don't know they're reaching out to me or if like things are just so like crazy that they have no clarity on what rep is. I guess maybe the reps aren't even assigned to accounts. I don't know. But I've definitely seen that become more prevalent and just, multiple people from the same org having the same message. And it's not like it's a month between them, right? Like it literally happens like sequentially on top of each other. I do find it interesting, your point of like, I don't know if it's ethical if you're the person taking the gift card. I think that is kind of an interesting hot take too. Because if they're going to offer it.
True. And it's there, might as well.
But I do have a question. If this has been part of your demand gen strategy, or if you run a campaign like this and you're thinking about and you're like, maybe this really isn't great for us long term, especially because a lot of the times you are going to get those people who are like, okay, if you're going to offer me $100, sure. But like, I'm not even in market. I have no budget. Like, just take this meeting.
I think your kind of subsequent notes kind of says it all. Like, I'm not in market. If it was good marketing, that ad would have been targeted to somebody that was in market, and it would have been relevant, and it could have been a really high ROI program. I think what I'm noticing is just like, I'm clearly not in market for certain, offerings that I'm getting, sort of bribed for. I don't know if that's the right word for using, but, knowing that I'm not in market for certain things and seeing certain messages, seeing the ad dollars being spent on me knowing the workings behind all that, it just makes my heart break a little.
Yeah, I agree. I'd be really curious for you three and everyone in the chat if you've ever come across a situation where you get one of those, like maybe email outreach and they're offering an incentive, but truly, you may have already been evaluating the platform, you have the budget, you are the decision maker, but because you don't want it to feel like you're booking a meeting because of the incentive, it actually has the opposite effect and makes you not want to talk to them and feel like you're like grabbing the bait. I'll be honest, it's happened to me on one or two occasions. So I'm just curious if it might be, working in the opposite effect.
That is interesting. I've personally never had that happen to me. But that is very interesting. I'd be curious to know if anybody in the chat has had that experience personally, and if we have any sales reps in the chat too that have that reaction. I'd be so curious.
Yeah, it might just be like I'm an overthinker about everything. Having like a moral dilemma, just deciding whether I schedule the demo.
Is Angela trying to be a good person?
No, just delete.
That's really interesting. Like it's a study of psychology, right? I think where I have had issues with this is with bigger enterprise orgs having gifting policies or like acceptance policies. And my situations have been very much with running events or podcasts or, collaborations where I would gift something after they've done something for us and then being like, oh, I can't accept that, or like, that's against our policies. But that's a really interesting thing to bring up. I will say one that does work really well is gifting through re-engagement campaigns. So for instance, I had a rep for a company who, and also in your gifting, be like a little personalized, please, y'all. Like, you don't have to like epically creep on me and get like real deep, because that gets a little weird, but like do a little bit of research so you can personalize that gift, right? Like a $50 Amazon gift card, okay, big whoop, and like, you don't even know how I feel about Amazon maybe. So like, maybe that's not the best opportunity there. But like, if you do just a little bit of looking through, like, even if you're on this episode, you can tell I have dogs, or like, these are probably my dogs. It might be a little weird if they weren't, I don't know. But, finding those triggers of like, how can I take this a little step further? And for instance, so I was a customer of a company at my past org. When I moved to Gold Cash, you must have been using some kind of tool on the back end to trigger that, like, oh, she's moved to a new org. She reached out to me and she knew I was a craft beer fan. Obviously, I've not been drinking beer lately, but she had reached out to me and said, hey, would love to gift you, another gift card to a brewery, because that's what she had done the first time when we were interacting through that engagement. So I'd say if you are using any kind of incentive strategy, like, personalize it, please. Like, do a little due diligence there, because I think that will honestly work better if you're doing it in the right way. So I don't know if either of you agree with that or not, but that's kind of my take there.
Yeah, totally agree.
Totally, yeah.
If there's context behind the gifting, that usually makes the most sense.
Yes, 100%. Personalization without being epically creepy. That's the way to do it. So anyways, well, that was a really fun conversation, and I hope through 2024 we'll have a few other sticky bun situations to dive into. We're actually going to go into our next segment now. So this one is called The Data's in the Donuts. So I think this one might have some like interesting hot takes and just diverse opinions. And if you're over in the chat watching, feel free to join in on this conversation, because I'm really interested too in people's perspectives here. But Data's in the Donuts is all about what data points marketers should either hone in more or back up off of. So what are we measuring too much? What are we not measuring enough? Like, what are our takes there? And I know this is kind of a ever evolving conversation across marketers. So Kelly, we're going to start with you. What is your take here? Like, what are we tracking too much of? What do we not track enough? Too much? Let's go.
Okay. So let's see. I think this is probably going to be a hot take. But my issue lately has been with, it's more so the label of intent data. Intent data has been this big thing. It's been a buzzword in B2B marketing for years, so many years. I think when account-based marketing came up, it was like intent data was shortly after. But I think we've packaged this whole idea of an intent data, and there are companies out there that sell this data off the shelf. I have a problem with that because I think that when we buy data off the shelf like that, we miss a lot of the understanding of where this data comes from and how we can best use it. I think intent data is best collected first party, best on your website, best on your products and your apps. So I think if you're understanding your audience and what Angela had mentioned earlier about that user journey, really following their step-by-step movements, those pieces of data collectively tell an intent story. And I think that another quip I have with lazy marketing is just buying intent data, saying like, oh, this person has raised their hand because Google Shopping says so. I think that's where I have issues with marketers relying too much on that type of data, because I think we have to be a little bit groundbreaking and human in understanding how people behave and always change and optimize towards those behaviors. Another piece of data that I think that, I'm big on data. It's probably one of the things that I'm most passionate about. When I see data visualization, my heart starts beating fast. And so I think what happens with people like me is that you can get way too sucked into the data, and you can lose track of your entire day, month, year by looking at data and not being able to take action on it. And that's what I call analysis by paralysis. I think when you have data like that, you have to just acknowledge that data should be used directionally, that it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. And if you are able to extract that direction, you're good to go. You don't have to be a data scientist to be a good demand marketer. As long as you can take away the bullet points of what your data is telling you, that's the story that you have to take action on. And so I think that is sort of my 2 cents on data today.
Oh, so much like good nuggets there. So many things I can jump into. First off, on that last part you said about the directionality of the data, or where it's pointing you or bringing you. Talk a little bit more about that, especially for people who might not be the most like data happy or data friendly, or like, they look at a spreadsheet and they're like, oh no, what is all this? Like, how can you deduct kind of that data direction that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think, when you first start looking at data, you have to ask yourself some questions. So like, what am I trying to learn? I think that's like the very basic of it. If you're able to say like, I'm trying to learn X, Y, and Z, you can put together like reports that answer those questions. Without those questions, you can't just go into Salesforce and build a report. The report is supposed to reflect some kind of, question or inflection point. And so if you ask those questions first before you go into build mode, that's where you can kind of, think about your funnel in modules, and build your reporting in modules. And so I think conversion rates is really probably most of what demand gen marketers are looking at. How when you have, website visitors and you want to turn website visitors into emails that you're collecting, that conversion rate is what you're collecting, and you're always trying to increase your conversion rate. And so collecting data from different sources, from your who's coming to your website from where is probably a good place to start. That's where I would start structuring your data first and understanding your funnel. It's all to say that the funnel goes like this, right? So start from the top. Where's the biggest entrance of your audience? And then what do you want them to take action on at the very bottom? And so that's how you can start calculating conversion rates on your funnel. And then, you can start making optimizations and improvements to see if things change. The steps.
And I have one more follow-up question. So the intent data side of it, if you are, let's say, using a lot of intent data tools and maybe want to like wean yourself off of those, any best tips on how to do that?
That is a very good question. I have not been in a position myself where I've had to kind of take steps back to pair back data from hygiene purposes. I would start from scratch. If you're working in a world where you have just so much data layered together, start over and put yourself in the audience shoes and then outline the steps it takes for your website visitor to become, a lead, to become a customer, and then figure out what the important steps are. So for example, if you're working on a very basic website, there are pieces of a website that are more high intent than others. Your career page is not high intent. If someone's visiting my career page, I'm not trying to sell to them. My recruiter might try to poach them, but not trying to sell to them. But if they hit your pricing page, that's where oh, this person's interested. So if you tag certain pages on your website as high intent versus low intent or no intent, that's where you can start kind of mapping your customer journey and understanding if there are certain pages that get hit before a very high value action gets taken.
That was super helpful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So now, Angela, we're going to kick it over to you. So what is your take on this topic? What data are we tracking too much of or not enough of? What's your kind of hot take in this realm?
Yeah. Hard to follow Kelly on this one. Data queen on that for sure. And I'll try not to be too repetitive, but there's something she mentioned and it's very top of mind for me too. And it's sort of around creating that story. So I would say, I'm going off of the assumption that most of us in demand gen are gathering those very top of funnel metrics, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, the conversion rates in between. So if you are already gathering that data today and you're trying to make a big impact, just come up with one question or one hypothesis at a time and say, hey, I see this data point. I hypothesize X, Y, Z. And then work on the reporting around that to try to help answer your question or just provide more guidance around it. So have a really clear idea in your head about what you want to answer, or else then again, it is just a bunch of data that you're looking at and you're trying to drive insights from it, but nothing's really actionable. So just kind of narrow the focus for a bit. And on that, I think something top of mind also is getting it really tight with your ops people, marketing ops, business ops, whoever it is that can help you build those reports. Because sometimes you might spend a lot of time trying to build the right report, think you have the right visualization. If you're not a data expert, utilize them. They're there to help you and work together on this is the hypothesis I have, or this is the question I'm trying to answer. Can you help me work through this? And then you'll just have a really beautiful partnership going if you do that. And then something else related to data that I think is really important as marketers is also having for yourself and for your team a really clear-cut picture of some of the more the broader business metrics. Know what your organization's revenue growth is, churn rates, retention rates, annual RRR, if you're working off a SaaS product, average deal size. You should know some of this for marketing too, but as well as broader sales cycles. And so that way you can kind of compare, okay, here's a marketing sales cycle versus a sales source. You want to have those benchmarks and you just want to have a really good picture and knowledge of what's going on in your organization as a whole, so that then when you're looking at the marketing data, it might influence the sorts of questions and hypotheses that you form around the marketing data that you have.
And that's an excellent point too, because whether you're a demand gen marketer, a content marketer, MOPS, whatever, at some point in time, you're going to be messaging around your product and you're going to be putting messages together and content out the door. And if you don't have awareness of that average deal size or your average cycle or things like that, you can put a very inaccurate message out the door, and that is really going to hurt you long term. So I think you make an excellent point there of being aware of those kind of standard operations of your business, but also knowing that this can change and being aware of that. So not settling too deep into that data and being aware of taking a pulse either quarterly or every 6 months or something like that, just to make sure nothing has drastically changed. There's not any crazy fluctuations. If you've added a new market or vertical or something like that, that they're not showing something drastically different than, the overarching basis of your business. So I think that was really great to pull in. And I'll say too, on the ops side, Yes. And I actually at one point in time got really crazy and I pitched my org that I should have a content ops person. Didn't get them, but I have a dream that, someday that will be a thing. And even if it's just like the ops person has like 20% of their time dedicated to content, but I think the more you can use your ops, the more you can build those relationships and you can tell them, because for me, and like, I don't know if my ops team is watching here now, but I am not a good data person. It's just not how I think and not how my brain works. But I can tell them like, I want to know XYZ, or like, I need to, at the end of the day, understand if blah, blah, blah is working. And then if they can just translate that into that data and that report, like you were talking to, it's perfect. So, well, thank you all for talking data. I know data is a hot topic, and I know Mike was in there talking about like, there's this thing called marketing attribution, and it's just very messy and sticky. And, it's a journey, and it's a never-ending journey too. So thank you for having those conversations. Again, we are about to head into our last segment for Q&A. So if you haven't yet, jump into the Q&A. If you do have a question you want to ask to Kelly and Angela, add it in that Q&A tab, but also take a few moments to upvote which ones you do want asked, so then I can prioritize our Q&A list, because I know there's a few over there. So we are going to jump into our donut dedications now, which is one of my favorite segments. So So donut dedications is really all about getting some inspiration and sharing some shout outs. So each of my guests are going to give 2 different donut dedications, one to a demand gen or just general, a marketing person you want to give a shout out to creative things they're doing in the market, cool things they're putting out into the world, or just, hyping up somebody. And also a brand that you admire who's doing really cool things. Of course, like most of us, I think, are probably B2B marketers, but B2C does some really cool things. So if you want to sprinkle in some B2C, I'm fine with that. So Angela, Kelly, who wants to tackle their donut dedications first?
I'm happy to. I think I'm off mute. I'll make it easy. Let's see, for people, my dedications, I already kind of gave them a little shout out in the last segment, but MOPS ops team here at Spekit, Ben, Devin, really just such a great partnership that we've built, and honestly I could not dig into the data as much as I do and build the story that I want to build without having the support of that team and helping me answer questions and identify bottlenecks and errors and things to improve on. So yeah, big shout out to MOPS and ops people over here at Spekit. And then company, not a customer, hopefully maybe someday, but Mutiny is just doing their demand gen and their content. It's great. It's whoever is like head of content over there. Yay for you. Hats off to you. I just feel like in the newsletters specifically, there are so many gems, like such valuable content. They definitely understand their audience and their personas and the various segments that they're speaking to, and they know how to deliver content that is really just valuable and helpful in our roles. And also they find a way to make it really entertaining and something that when I get that newsletter, I'm excited to read it, and not only just for the valuable content that they deliver, but just for inspiration, because it's just that good. So I don't know if you're a customer of Mutinies and the content that you receive from them might be a little bit different, but if you're in that like prospect lead phase like I am, the content is really just chef's kiss.
Yes, Mutiny has some great stuff, I will say, because I followed their stuff for quite some time now. And if you want to hear a funny story, the other day I was actually trying to remember, like I could see their logo in my head and I just could not make the connection to like their brand name, and I'm pregnant. So I have pregnancy brain, which is awful. And so I actually went back and like texted some old colleagues who I knew what I was talking about. But before I did that, I went on Google and was trying to find like SAS raccoon logo, and yeah, y'all, the results I got were very strange. So but yes, Mutiny has great stuff. I love what they're pumping out there. So great shout out there. And again, MOPS, we all love MOPS. So Kelly, what donut dedications do you have before we jump into our Q&A?
Yeah, so let's see. Marketer, I wanted to spotlight. I was thinking about this, and somebody that I have actually worked with at Goldcast, but also a previous role came to mind. 𝐀𝐨𝐵𝐿 is a rock star content marketer. She has definitely built out a pretty large following on social. So if you're a marketer, highly recommend you follow her on Twitter and on LinkedIn. She posts a lot of great stuff about B2B content marketing. Definitely look her up. In terms of a brand that I think is doing really, really solid marketing, I'm gonna name two. First one, if you follow Figma on LinkedIn social, I'm a huge fan of their social strategy because it's very clear that their community of users knows Figma even better than Figma themselves, because there's so many power users out there, their community is blowing up, and they're basically using their community to do marketing for them, which is, I think, incredible. So check them out, check their social strategy out. I think Spotify as like a consumer brand is also doing some incredible marketing. I think spotlighting them in particular, because I think their personalization is on point. And I also think that they're using AI in like the best way possible for music. So I'm a huge fan of what they're doing on their marketing, but yeah, those are my spotlights.
Figma one is a good one because I can't tell you many brands in software I've seen where people get the logo tattooed on them, but Figma is one that I've seen. So that's a great shout out. And I will also upvote 𝐀𝐨. She's also incredibly kind and nice. So fun fact of the day, when I was interviewing for the role at Goldcast, I actually reached out to 𝐀𝐨 to ask about like the position and Kelly and the role. It was so nice, and she replied to me and she sealed the deal for me. So a very nice, wonderful, well-educated marketer who does put out great content. So good shout out there too. So we're going to transition over to our Q&A. So like I said, if you have any final questions for our guests, feel free to pop that over in that Q&A. Also take time to upvote so I know which ones to share on stage. So we are going to get started. So this question was submitted beforehand. So FYI, if you register for a Donuts in Demand episode, you can submit questions before the event, which is super nice. Gives us kind of some guidance on where to bring our content. So Annie Ralph of Reed and McKay submitted this question. What are your top tips for getting people to attend live rather than watching a pre-recorded webinar? So Kelly, Angela, not sure who wants to take this one first, but any tips to share with Annie about getting people live watching in the moment?
I can take this first. I think in my personal experience, the best tips for getting people to attend live is incentivizing them with some kind of action, whether it's like today when Lindsay's giving away a planner, or some kind of reward or redemption for the end user. I do think that people will get more out of a live event than a pre-recorded. So I think it's not hard to get people watching live versus pre-recorded. It's more so how do you get people live and engaged versus live and multitasking. I think that is the bigger challenge. If they want to consume your content, they're going to consume it one way or another. But getting them live is the highest engagement, which typically means highest dollars.
I agree. I think incentivizing is definitely a key tool in the toolbox. I would also add just the content of the webinar is make or break it. And, it depends on what the urgency is for that person to learn what you're going to be offering in that webinar. So really honing in on content that's relevant, timely, and is going to give the viewer something that they can take away and apply in their role almost immediately. So I think they're going to be incentivized to join live if they're facing a current challenge, like many demand gen marketers might be facing challenges with getting people to join an event live. And so it's creating the content, again, knowing your customer and your buyer really well, that that they're going to be really excited to get that information pretty quickly.
Sorry, I'm going to plug one more thing here, and I'm going to shamelessly plug this. Getting a great platform is key to getting a good event live and getting a good engaged attendance.
Yes.
She would be remiss of being our head of marketing She did not.
I had to.
I highly support that statement. But it's also funny that we've brought up the thing of incentives, because going back to sticky bun situations and that being kind of an ethical dilemma, I think events are one of the places where you can best use an incentive in like a non-icky way. And we actually just had this conversation over in the Event Marketers Club. If you don't know, audience listening, we actually have a Slack community built for event marketers. I believe we have over 1,000 event marketers from across the globe in that community. We actually had a really fascinating conversation around like, are incentives to get people in the door good? Are they bad? Are they icky? You know, do they actually work? Are they bringing in the right audience? So it was a really fascinating conversation around this. But I am always of the mindset that you should incentivize, especially because not only does it bring people into your event live and dedicating that time, but it's also a way for you to build bridges and relationships with your audience and also like give back to those who are most engaged. So it's like a win-win-win to me. And then my only last kind of bit of advice for that is to really think about what you can do in an event that people can't get on demand. So are you providing them resources they can't get any other way? Are you sharing things that they won't have access to if they don't attend live? So create some of that FOMO, right? Like that's how you get people live and to actually dictate that time to you. So we're going to hop into our next question. So this is from Reagan. Hello, Reagan. I'm so excited you're watching today. So Reagan asks, are you investing in paid ads any differently this year than you did last year? Ooh, so Angela, Kelly, who wants to answer this one first?
I'm happy to take this one first because I absolutely am. And I am from a couple of different aspects. And so I think there's three main things I'm doing differently than I was last year or the year before. And one, spending a lot less, to be honest. And I know that there's different hot takes on that and different viewpoints on when it makes sense to spend and when it doesn't make sense to cut back. But for us in our business, it did feel like it made sense to cut back spending quite a bit. And we still ran ads and are running ads on LinkedIn, but that's specifically the area where we cut back the most from where we were previously. So very specific to our business, but that channel we did pull back quite a bit. And that just had to do with our goals on the platform and what spend was required, I think, to just reach the goals of what we were trying to achieve there. Also, in terms of cutting back spend, pros and cons to this. And I love working with our vendors and our agencies, but we did walk away from working with agencies that solely helped us on paid ads. And I think that there were actually a lot of benefits to taking that in-house and just being really close to what's going on in the ad platforms and our spend and being really agile and making changes to the creative. So definitely cons to that as well, but a lot of pros as well as to take that in-house if you have someone who can do that and the knowledge to run that. And then also just the creative that we're running is different based on the goals. I mentioned our goals changing quite a bit on LinkedIn. And I think this was probably and still is one of the biggest challenges that demand gen marketers might face. And it's that question about ROI and proving the ROI of your paid ads, but sort of changing your strategy and what your desired outcome of the paid ads are, and then communicating that to leadership is something that's changed quite a bit in terms of, whether you're building a remarketing audience and that's what the main goal is, or, it's to tap into new business. But some of those goals changed. And I would say that they changed most drastically in terms of using ads for conversions and high intent conversions versus more low intent activities.
Yeah, I can double tap that because we've actually done a lot of the same things of rethinking about, well, what ad spend is going to be for kind of a brand activation versus where is the best places to put our money for high intent, for conversions, for actual pipeline. So Kelly, don't know if you have more you want to add on that one or not, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're similar, Angela. We are paring back a lot on our paid programs, really just focusing on like bottom funnel things that are converting. We're really watching our cost per acquisitions and, just trying to spend in a smart way. Another thing that, in 2024 that will go along with our paid program, which is getting smaller, is that landing pages, we haven't done a lot of experimentation on our pages to make them, super lightweight and conversion happy. So doing a lot of that work before we put more money behind those programs.
Conversion happy. I think that rings very nice in a lot of marketers' ears. So we're going to go to another question that was submitted from Annie ahead of time. And so her question is, what are your top tips for email invitation subject lines? So this would be to webinars or events or things like that. So any best tips on what works best on those invitation emails to people?
What I've found, at Goldcast, we're always experimenting with, things that have to do with events and how to get, the best event performances. Email is, the highest source for, anyone registering for an event and also attending an event. So that's a key tip for anyone that's here. It's, if you're trying to get people to your events, email is what we found to be the highest driver for that. So email subject lines is a big deal, making sure your open rates and click rates are strong. I found that, questions in the subject lines, the question that's relates to the topic that you're going after, definitely gets strong open rates. It is definitely a no contest in my experience in adding personalization to subject lines will get stronger open rates than a generic one. Another tip for subject lines, it depends on your industry and your audience. I think all that goes without saying for anything that I just said, know your audience first. That's like first and foremost what you should do. Emojis have worked really well with audiences I've marketed to in the past. And that's mostly marketers.
I was actually going to bring that one up because I did recently see someone share about talking about like something wild where like, in emojis versus non-emoji subject lines, emojis won out by 20% or like something really crazy. So very good point. Angela, any tips on the email subject lines?
Yeah, following up a lot of things Kelly said. I mean, emojis, we've seen the same thing. It definitely something bad. It's just draws attention. It's fun. It feels really friendly. I think like, hey, friends.
Good energy.
Yeah, it's definitely a good vibe for sure. And so I definitely think if you haven't tried that, go ahead and run some A/B test or try it out. I think, yes, just running tests in general are really important because email is a top driver for us too in terms of registration and promotion of our virtual events and webinars. And also make sure that what we find is that the more clear you are with what the landing page is going to be in terms of like, you can even call out that it is a webinar registration, like just very clear so that the person has a really good idea of what they're clicking on. I think it's really fun to get catchy and throw like fun things in, but sometimes the less relevant they are, the less likely they are to actually convert the person that's receiving the email. So make it relevant for sure. And you can find ways to get creative. And I think, this didn't come up in our ethical dilemmas, but I know that it's top of mind for a lot of marketers and the use of ChatGPT and AI writing tools. I think that there's a lot of opportunity to get inspiration and influence from those tools without it being like an ethical dilemma. So if, you have a couple of ideas in mind for your subject lines, maybe test one out in ChatGPT and see how you can make it a little more creative while staying on topic. And then include those in your test to see if the ideas and the inspo you've gathered from those tools are actually helping or hurting you.
Yeah, the clear over clever has been something we've brought up before on Donuts in Demand in the past. So I think that's always a tried and true thing of like, you can have moments where you're trying to be a little too clever and people are like, what the hell are you even talking about? So I love the clarity over kind of the cleverness, baseline to stick to. So, well, Kelly, Angela, it's been a great conversation. We've covered a lot of ground today. Thank you both so much for being our guests. And Kelly, I'm excited to pass the torch to you for the next as host. So thank you everyone for watching, submitting your questions, engaging the chat. We really appreciate it. We wish you the best 2024 ever. And we're so excited to continue to produce results for you with this show month to month. Again, last shout out to that demand generation compensation survey. Hit that CTA if you want the info on that. We would love your help either submitting your information or sharing it on social media. We really want to gather as much data as possible, put out the best report we can for you all. And as an FYI, we'll actually be launching that report at our March Donuts in Demand episode. So you don't want to miss that one. So hopefully we'll see you next month on February 13th at Donuts in Demand. Well, I won't see you, I'll have a newborn, but Kelly you there. So bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks
Hi,
for having
everybody. Thank
Bye.
you.